Welcome, everybody. My name is Tom Devine. I'm with SuperCon Online. We're here. It's October 3rd and 4th. We're really excited to show you guys some really cool panels. I get to interview a really exciting guest today. SuperCon, even though we're not in person seeing everybody, it turned out not so bad because we ended up getting some creators from all around the country that are going to be able to talk to us, and that's what I get to do for you guys today. So what I'm going to do is I have a creator interview. We're going to go through and we're gonna find out all about this man here. So if without further ado, could you introduce yourself and give us a little background of who you are and how you relate to comics in the comic world?
Yeah, thanks. No problem. I am Samir Barrett. I work on creator-owned comics, Mindwave Comics, with my buddy Dave Wheeler. And yeah, currently that my right now I'm doing that on the side. I'm also a storyboard artist working in animation right now. Uh, so I'm out here in Los Angeles, California, on that whole side of things. Um, yeah, we've been sort of been in the I've been in like the comics slash cartoon sort of world for the past kind of decade, I guess. Yeah, we've been working on Mindwave Comics that has Misadventures of Wonderboy. That was our first comic, and The Bolt Strikes, which is the follow up, which is story that I created, and we've been going back and forth on those stories for the past 10 years, on and off, and it's been crazy. We started that back in college, in the Savannah College of Art and Design. That's where we met up, and that's where we got started doing our own thing, like out of school, and have just been doing it as like our side hustle, getting it out whenever we can over the past couple of years. But yeah.
Well, that sounds awesome. So, I mean, first of all, a lot to unpack there. This sounds great. You're in LA. You do animation as well as comics, and you went to the Savannah. What was it? The art college? You said?
Yeah, Savannah College of Art and Design.
Oh, that's awesome. How was your experience there?
It was pretty cool. I went there to study. I majored in animation and minored in sequential art, comics, and all that. And yeah, I had a great time. Especially in the sequential department. I feel like I gravitated to that a lot more. So a lot of people who graduated from there with me think that I was a comics major, because I spent all of my time in that building with with all those students and with those professors and stuff. But yeah, and it was super uh it taught me a lot. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. It taught me a lot,
Yeah.
and is very integral to the whole like storyboarding side of my career, because I feel like it definitely gave me a leg up in that department, where it's like comics teaches you not just to like draw, but you're also a director and a set designer and all of that. You're a writer, you're so many different things, and all of that really lends itself to doing storyboards.
Oh, I mean, I agree with you completely. And I think that's probably overlooked. I mean, even I sometimes see storyboard art and I'm going like, man, this is a wasted art. Nobody
Yeah.
ever sees this. It's like,
Yeah.
look at how good this was set up. This director barely had to do anything. He just followed exactly what this person before him set completely out. A lot of times it's done where, yes, I know it has to be done quickly, but it looks really good. And then it actually tells the story right there. So I can imagine how that went hand in hand for you. And that's really cool to hear.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
so then let's back up a little bit. We want to go before school. When did you find your interest in animation and cartoons and in comic books? Where did it all start? I mean, sitting in front of the cartoon on or the TV on Saturday mornings, or
Yeah, I mean, pretty much. I've been drawing. My mom would say since I could hold a pencil. So I was really drawing from the beginning, since like 3 years old, as early as I can remember, and I loved cartoons. I think the some of the big influences on me when I when I was younger were things like The Land Before Time and We're Back, a dinosaur story. There was a lot of dinosaur stuff that really hit me big when I was younger, and I didn't really know that I wanted to do like animation stuff really until I think Toy Story came out. I think Toy Story came out, and like I already loved cartoons and yeah, cartoons and cartoon shows and movies and stuff. Like that was like a huge part of me, but it didn't really click to me that like cartoons were something that like people made and worked on until I saw Toy Story and saw like a behind the scenes thing and learned that like, oh, this is like a job that people have and people do. So at that point I wanted to be an animator. And then like the years went on and then I went to school and then I learned like all the process. I was like, I don't know if I want to be an animator per se. I did do animation stuff and it was fun. But like I was way more equipped for like 2D animation than 3D. So like the hand drawn stuff is fun. It's very hard, but it's fun. But yeah, I eventually got into the comic side and the storyboarding side. But yeah, my upbringing started super young with all of the cartoons and animation and stuff. I got into comics. I want to say we're like always my big introduction or my big like connection to comics was really cartoons at first. So it was like the Spider-Man cartoon in the 90s and the X-Men cartoon that everybody loves. Batman animated series, obviously. All of those classic shows. That was like I was like a comic fan, but it was more so like a cartoon fan. And I finally got into reading comics and stuff like in a big way. Like there was a lot of little stuff. Like I got a lot of X-Men comics from the 90s. But I got into it in a big way when I was given some Milestone comics featuring Static in particular, who eventually got a show, Static Shock. And that was like a huge influence on me. And I got those later. Like I got those late in the game, not when they like early came out. I got those later. And I got into Marvel and stuff when they were doing what was it when they started Ultimate Marvel, I think.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah, I think the appeal of that was like, oh, it's like all the things I know, but it's starting from the beginning, and I can hop on because sometimes when you come into comics, it's like a little overwhelming of like there's this huge wealth of history and back catalog and stuff, and you're like, where do I start? So I hopped onto there, and that was like a big gateway into like all these other things and any like new stories that started up, but were in the big superhero comic genre. I hopped onto. So like the DC's Blue Beetle with Jaime Reyes. Started, that was buying that every week. I was following the oh god, what was it called? I think it was the new there was a new run of X-Men where it was like the new students, like I think X-Men Academy or New Mutants or something. I followed them for a while, and like X-23 came in through there. So like all of that was when I was big. That was my big gateway, that sucked me into that world a lot.
Totally. Well, I mean, those are some amazing books. I mean, starting with Static Shock to be your, kind of the big intro. I mean, Dwayne McDuffie is like, one of the, isn't that his name, right?
Yeah.
I think Dwayne McDuffie, I'm pretty sure he's like the creator of Static Shock. And that guy is, a true comic book legend, lost way too soon, brought a completely different voice and obviously a different background than just the white 50-year-old man making comic books for whoever, and then brought in African American badass who was cool and it was different from everybody else. Yeah, I totally love Static Shock as well, so I can see how you got your intro there, man. And then definitely all of those stories are absolutely great. I remember, I read comics during that time as well. I remember those lines when X-23 was coming in. That was such a fun time in X-Men. I can't remember what books those stories were happening in either, but yeah, very cool, man. So, you know, this sounds like you have clearly a depth of, yeah, you're clearly must be around the same age as me too, because you have like all the same influences. I was totally into all of the, before I read a comic book, I watched all of the X-Men series and all of the Batman series, or I guess as much as I could. Back then, you never like got to see every episode. You'd only like, would catch the episode as it was on or whatever.
Yeah.
But that's insanely cool. So, you know, you said that you started to look at animation and then stuck with the 2D style. You know, as you're drawing, you're 3 years old, you're thinking about going into animation. When do you bring a computer into your work and your art process, or do you still not use a computer?
Oh no, yeah, I definitely use a computer, and it's a big part of my process. And sometimes I feel bad that I've moved so far away from traditional. So I try to force myself to get back to, like, you know, pencil and paper every now and then when I can. But it was in like so I'm 31, and so it was in like oh wow, it was, I want to say, beginning of high school. I think beginning or middle of high school. It was actually probably around like sophomore year.
Sure.
When I lived in, so my mom's side of the family, my mom is from Amsterdam, so a lot of her side of the family lives there. And sophomore year of high school, I was in Amsterdam for a year, and I was messing around. I'd learned a little bit about a program called Photoshop at the time. I think it was like Photoshop 7. And I was I was trying to learn how to get my drawings from like tradition, on paper, get them like into the computer and whatnot. And my uncle introduced me to someone who was his name was Jeroen, and he taught me. He worked at like a website that did a lot of like graphic design, and he was like so he knew all about Photoshop, and he gave me a copy of the program. I think through him I got like my first tablet, and learned how to do that. So I learned a lot from him. He was like a crash course in like, here's this program, you can color things like this, and I go to the office every day or every couple of days, and he'd show me all of these things on how to essentially.
And this is in Amsterdam that you were doing this?
Yeah.
So can you speak Dutch?
Yeah. My
what? Wow, that is cool, man.
Yeah, it's a little rusty now because I haven't been back in so long, and I don't get to like use it as much.
Sure.
But yeah, that's what I speak with my grandma and my relatives out there.
Oh, wow, that's so cool. I mean, I get to go to Amsterdam for work one time a year. It's like one of my favorite cities, and I mean, it's like my favorite place in the world. So that's such a weird that you live there for a whole year. Wow, that's really, really cool. And I'm sure that brings a whole new perspective to your work and style, having, seen a European influence, having a European parent. That's extremely cool to hear. So yeah, obviously I assumed that the computer was a part of your work now, but I know that as a lot of people get in there, it isn't always right away. So that's always interesting to see how that process starts. And yes, giving it through, if you were already starting to be able to work on a tablet, then I can imagine how that process goes. It's hard to go back once you find it to be that easy. So as you're you're starting to do this, it's high school, you're starting to figure out exactly what your interests are. How does it go from you're in Amsterdam and this is for kind of a lot of times at our convention, we have a lot of people that are in high school and middle school, and they're coming through, they're interested, they're nerdy, they don't always know how to talk to everybody, they don't always know how to ask the right questions, but they have interests just like you, and you took this ability that you have, and you transitioned from getting information from this guy that you met in high school to a couple years later you're going to school for specifically animation and art. How was the process in your mind and with your family and with your friends able to do that jump from from high school and doing it as a hobby to deciding that this is going to be an actual career path? Was that hard? Did you, overthink it? Was there anything that was, because to me, I guess I would think, hey, everybody's just going to a state school, or, I've heard that, it's easier just to go here,
Yeah,
or,
yeah,
I'm going to go into business, or I don't know what I'm going to do. For you to
yeah.
take that jump and really go with it, I think it's had to be daunting for you, but also it's really inspiring for people that hear your story.
Yeah, I mean, it was cool. I feel like I'm actually very, very fortunate with my upbringing and my family. My family is overall pretty artistic. There's so as when it came to like me drawing, like I've always been drawing in some sort of capacity, and my mom especially, she always found a ton of avenues and every opportunity possible to like get me into like an art class, or get me into like a program where I can like learn how to do, got me like life drawing, or got me to like meet artists. He had me whenever she had knew anyone. She knew I wish I remembered his full name. I think his name was Terry Moore, who was a comic book artist, and he taught me a lot about doing comics. Like before, like even before the Photoshop stuff, before I was in high school, I was like middle school or whatever. So there were a lot of
Is it Terry Moore, like the artist, the comic book artist Terry Moore, or?
I may be getting his name totally
Oh,
wrong.
okay. Okay.
So my his name was Terry.
Okay.
And he worked on a Battle Priest comic, I believe.
Oh,
A Battle
cool.
Priest spinoff. Yeah. Um yeah. So there was always kind of this understanding that art was going to be something that I was going to do.
Hmm.
Like it was just like, as far as my family was concerned, they just kind of knew that like this was going to be the path that I was going to be on. But at the same time, it was still like you can think that and know that, but then like actually doing it is still very daunting, and it does take a while to sort of figure it all out and make it click. So yeah, I definitely went in knowing that like, okay, this is what I'm going to be doing on some level, but I still had to get there, from transitioning from this is what I'm doing on my own to like actually making it a sustainable thing to keep me afloat and whatnot. And yeah, and I feel like as far as like other people looking to get into it in whatever capacity, it's good to keep in mind that it is, I guess the cliche saying is that it's a marathon and not a not a race, not a sprint. Um, where it's like there are a lot of steps that take place, and it's going to takes a different amount of time for everybody. So sometimes it'll take longer, sometimes sometimes it'll be quick. But just keeping up with it and understanding that like everything you're doing, even if it's not where you want to be yet, everything you're doing currently is in service to get there. Like um I've talked a lot about like I was doing like we've been doing the Mindwave comics for several years, and I very much enjoy being able to create those stories and build that world. But then I also have like a big passion for animation and storyboarding and stuff, and so that was the thing I desperately wanted to be a part of. And after graduating from school, that was like it took me like 5 years of not doing anything in the realm of animation before I finally got in. And some people take longer. Some people get super lucky and do it immediately after like
Sure.
graduating or whatever. Um, yeah, I moved all over. I moved all over the place. I lived in Portland for a little bit. I worked at a Staples office supply store for several years,
Mm.
just doing that and doing comics and art on the side, when I could, and eventually got an opportunity to start on um, the Stretch Armstrong show on Netflix, and that was like my big big break to be like, oh, okay, now now I can work on this like sort of animation side of things and see what that's like.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's so cool. It is such an interesting aspect that a lot of people probably don't even think about is storyboarding for animation, but it has got to be probably one of the biggest parts of the actual process for putting it together. So that's so cool. So I mean, Stretch Armstrong, awesome. What is your process in that storyboarding? What is it like? Are you getting a script and then you have to put things together? Kind of talk to us. What would be a storyboarding job? What is that like?
Yeah, it's so it's you definitely you first you start out with like a handout basically, which is sort of just like a meeting with your director and sometimes the writers, their other board members on this, whoever's working on the episode, and essentially go through the script and read everything and then see what it's like, and then you'll usually just like have a discussion with the director and whoever to see like what the vision is supposed to be, what they want to do. But yeah, you get a script, and then you just start thinking about it creatively, start planning things out in your mind, and then you start to go into like thumbnailing stuff out and roughing stuff out. And depending on what project you're on, depending on what show you're on, they may have they have different schedules or different procedures, but for the most part, you go and you start to rough things out, and you'll have check-ins and you'll have like reviews, and over the course of a certain amount of weeks, you're just like boarding stuff out. But yeah, you start out looking at the script, talking it out with other people. That's what I've learned a lot lately. Like it's super helpful to have other artists there, talking stuff out with you and helping you think about things in ways that maybe you don't necessarily think about. Because sometimes it's easy to get stuck in your own head or to like overthink stuff too much. That tends to happen with me a lot, where sometimes I think way too, I think about a million ways to do a thing and can't figure out the best way to do it, or like I start doing it one way and then like halfway through I'm like, oh, I should have done it this way. Then I start redoing it, and you end up taking forever. But yeah, that's a little bit of like what that process is like.
Yeah, I mean, that seems like once again, an amazing position to be in, to be able to, talk to the director, talk to the writers about doing this, and then put their vision to actually, that's kind of like the transition period where it becomes real. This is what we're going to see on screen. This is the kind of the rundown of how it's going to go. That is so cool. What's it like working on something like that and then finally going to your Netflix app and then hitting, play on the first one and then getting to see some of your storytelling?
It's surreal. It's definitely, it's really cool. I can't lie.
Yeah.
When the first show I worked on was as a revisionist, where you're in that you're cleaning up storyboards.
Oh, sure.
So and that was really cool. That's a good like I feel like that's a good like learning process as far as like the stepping stone to get to like storyboarding and whatnot. And just in that alone, like that, I was seeing boards that I worked on, but not stuff that I boarded. And it was still to be like, oh, cool, like somebody animated that based off of like the poses I cleaned up and whatnot. And the first thing that I storyboarded on was the Invader Zim movie, and that one,
Wow.
yeah, I know, it's crazy.
That is so cool, yeah. Man. I mean, I don't mean to like, that is amazing. Holy smokes. So in the Invader Zim movie, I mean, wow, that is so amazing. Yeah, dude.
Yeah. Yeah. And Invader Zim was a show I really enjoyed as a kid, and like never in my wildest dreams that I think I'd be, that I think I'd be working on that, but
yeah, that's cool. I mean, I watched that. I watched that.
Yeah.
I have 3 kids. We all watched it on a family movie night together,
oh,
and
awesome.
We loved it, man. So
that's awesome.
So whatever, you must have had some good ideas there.
Yeah, yeah. And so like when I saw that for the first time, and that took like a while to come out after we'd worked on it, it was
Oh, sure.
And so when that finally came out, and that was like, even just like the trailer, the first trailer had like, I think like 2 or 3 seconds of like a shot I boarded, and I was like, oh my god, like it's real, that it's really gratifying to see that, like, oh, okay, like the thing that I like thought up and like kind of like scribbled down, somebody took it and made that a real thing. Like that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and it is cool. So as you're doing that, I mean, that's a very important part of the process, as in you are really kind of deciding how the camera is going to kind of fit onto the screen, how it's going to show, the camera that I say in animation. So where do you kind of get your influences for angles, for different things? Do you still read comic books? Are you still watching animation, or is kind of it too behind the curtain for you now? I mean, how does that all go? Where do you get your inspiration for your work currently?
Yeah, I try to pull from as many things as possible. Um, yeah, as far as specific stuff, I mean, there's and stuff now. I know there are a lot of comic influences that I like to look at. Or a lot of like comic artists that like Carrie Randolph is one of my favorites, and I look at a lot of his stuff. Dan Mora is a great one. Thomas Perkins, he's worked on a lot of like my old favorite cartoon shows, and I actually got to work with him on the show, so that was really cool. And some like people who are like directors now who've worked on animated things, like Lauren Montgomery, who's really good. But yeah, and oh man, I'm trying to think of, yeah, there are like so many things that I randomly will pull from. I
Sure.
watch a lot of movies, and especially like action movies, and so every now and then when I'm like putting stuff together, I'm just thinking about, all right, what movies have I watched recently, and what have like done cool shots and things that I've liked, and can sort of like what's the direction sensibility that they're using in their thing. So like some JJ Abrams stuff, I like the way that he does his camera work in a lot of things. um on like a different end of the spectrum, it's kind of like Jordan Peele, especially with Get Out, and that's more like a horror sense of it, and like dramatic, and like suspenseful. So like trying to like look at how he does that, because it's not always action stuff that you're doing. And there are a lot of shows out now, or at least like recent shows that have looked at like Rise of the TMNT, um, which is just insane. If you looked at the animation that they have for, like,
I
it's
have, yeah.
the and I ended up meeting some of the people who worked on that, but like it's some of the stuff they do, I just look at it just to be like, I don't know how you like mentally comprehend being able to put this together, how you come up with that. And there's a lot of anime influence in there as well too. So I started
Awesome.
looking at more anime stuff, like Mob Psycho 100 is a really cool one. My Hero Academia is like one of the new like big ones, and it's also like superhero, so like I'm hooked on that already. I
Awesome.
wasn't a huge anime person, for like I like there are like a handful of animes that I like, but I wasn't like big into them. So recently I tried to get into a lot more. So like Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, I watched recently, and that was great.
Yeah.
Stuff like Gurren Lagann, like Outlaw Star and Cowboy Bebop, things like that, are good influences that I try to visually pull from. But yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like you have a super healthy media diet, and I think that's always where I find like the creators that I really like to follow, and I like the work that they do. It always seems that they are, in taking so much, that when you intake so many different things and so many different styles, you then just, that all becomes a part of your thing, and then it's way easier to not you're not copying anybody. You're not doing this. You're making your style that you used all those things that you use as influence. So that's really cool. And then like how you say, I didn't watch that much anime. I'm going to start adding that. And it's kind of like as a construction worker would add a new tool to his tool belt. You can now bring that into your work. So I think that's a really cool take for sure. So, where with you being an animation guy, what is your favorite animation? What is it a movie, is it a TV show, and what is your absolute favorite thing, and then kind of why? And if there's not one thing, that's okay, you can kind of talk to a few things, or and then I would like to hear more of the why, though. Like, what makes that, as you are creating animation, I would love to hear as you watch animation, what makes it special for you?
Yeah. That's a good question. It's also a tough question. But
yes, I know it is. I am putting you on the spot here, my man. Sorry.
No, you're totally fine, because I feel like so much has changed over, even like recently, over the last few years, like just like things that have come up, that like my choices have changed a little bit. But like, I think as far as like my old school one, it has to be The Land Before Time is probably my favorite overall. Just like even like nostalgia aside, I just think the Don Bluth's take, just like his take on animation, is very distinct. It's hard to describe. For one, it had dinosaurs in it, and I've always been like a dinosaur nut.
I can see that Brontosaurus, Argentinosaurus, something in the background right now. So,
and just like that's like one of, even like of all his work, that one was one of my favorites. I just think like the level of like emotion and character and that really stuck out to me. All of those characters are very, very distinct, like the design, but also how they act, like visually. And just like the world feels very, the world feels very earthy and like and grounded, but it's like a very cartoony, it's a very cartoony style. And so I feel like that had a lot of influence on me as far as my like for like visually distinctive characters in animation, and I'm really big on like character design stuff too, or like I really like things that have characters that feel very realized and unique to them. If you have a team of characters, I'm like, every character should look distinctive of each other, and you got to play around with like their shapes and their colors and their sizes and stuff to really make them feel cool and distinctive from each other, because I feel like that makes them all stronger as a unit. But yeah, Land Before Time is a big one that I always go back to, just because that I feel like everything that I do now, in some way you can draw back to that. It's that's sort of like the catalyst for a lot of my sensibilities. And as far as like one recent one, I mean, and it's one that like everyone is big on, but I think just because it blew so many people away when it came out, is Into the Spider-Verse. It just blew everyone's mind. It's
the best superhero film of all time.
Yeah,
I mean, it's the best superhero film of all time, including all Marvel live action, including all live action movies, including every movie I have ever seen in the superhero genre. Into the Spider-Verse is by far, that's what it was called, right? Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. That's the best. I mean, it's an animated movie, but I mean, when I saw that it was nominated for an Oscar and for animation, I was like, it should have been nominated for an Oscar for Best Picture, because it is I mean, even talking about it, I'm getting goosebumps because I'm with you, man. That
Yeah,
it blew me away. I still try to watch it on a regular basis.
yeah,
I can watch it all by myself. I can watch it with my kids. I can watch it with my wife. I get something new every single time.
yeah,
The dichotomy of animation styles switching from this way to
yes,
this way.
yeah.
Yeah, I love it,
It's
man.
beautiful. It's beautiful, and they really put so much like just like blood, sweat, and tears,
I
into
believe
all
it.
of the details into that movie, and just making it feel like a very unique, special experience. Yeah, so much work went into just like every step of the process, making that on like the story, the visuals, just like the music, the like every piece of it, just like it's not easy to make something like that,
Oh,
and
I could only imagine. I mean,
make it work.
it's perfect. Yeah,
Yeah,
you don't see perfect things. And then as you talked about Don Bluth is a wonder all of its own, right? I mean, it is
yeah,
hard to describe Don Bluth because it's kind of just like the Don Bluth style. Use
yeah,
Disney and other people aped him after he even left, but it's so specific, the Don Bluth style. And I mean, I haven't seen Land Before Time and I don't know how long, but like Petrie, these, I mean, I still
yeah,
remember these things stick with me so much. And I would say like I haven't watched it in 30 years probably, or 20, 25 years.
yeah.
And so I that's really cool how that's your influence. But I do have to ask you, there's like 15 Land Before Times now. Have you seen them all?
No, no. I think I stopped at
Okay, okay.
4 or 5. It was like I know as a kid, I loved 1 and 2. I know that much. I know because my mom had like a recording of me singing the songs from 2. And I remember like being older and being like, they added songs. It's so stupid. And then my mom was like, used to sing them, used to know them by heart. I was
You
like, oh,
loved them.
whoops. So yeah, so I watched a couple of them, but yeah, it got to the point where they stopped numbering them, and I was like, okay, this is too
Yeah, no. They lost me at about 4 too. But so now we'll kind of switch gears a little bit, going over to comic books. You work with Dave Wheeler, as you said here before. So what is your guys' process in working a comic book? Does he do the writing, you do the art, or do you do some writing? Does he do how does it all work?
Yeah, it's a little bit of a mix and match for Wonderboy, for the Misadventures of Wonderboy. That's Dave's character, and that's a story that he came up with also in school, and yeah, and he's really got a beat on that character and all of the like the wackiness and all of the like the world he wants to build around him. And so yeah, it's mostly like he comes up with the writing for that and the characters, and we really workshop like what the characters need to look like and go through designs and stuff like that, and then yeah, and then kicks it over to me, and I draw stuff out, and then he'll ink those up, and it sometimes it goes back and forth, just like depending on the schedules that we have and stuff.
Mhm.
Like I like to do a lot of the sound effects and like word bubble stuff like that. Like I get very sometimes I just get very anal retentive about things, like, oh, if I just got to move like the word tail this way and whatever, um and just play around with incorporating the effects and stuff with like the comic paneling and the action and stuff. So we get really into that. And then with the Bolt Strikes, which is a character I created, it's a little bit more back and forth, and I usually either I outline them and then he writes it up, or sometimes I write that up, and then we work on like I draw those up, and then he does inks on those and stuff. So yeah, it's a mix and match of like, usually depending on like what we have time to do and what people um feel like they really want to do on something. But yeah.
Yeah, well, that's really cool. So as an artist, do you prefer doing like the internal comics, laying them all out, getting that together, or do you like spending time like on a cover or like on a one page splash or a couple page splash? I mean, what do you enjoy as an artist, bringing to life more?
I think I do like the splashiness of like the splash page sometimes. Um, it it'll depend if, and I think it'll usually depend on like what's happening on the pages, because sometimes it can be really fun laying out just like a a complex action over a couple over a couple panels on a page, because sometimes you have to figure out how to be economical with stuff and figure out how to show everything that's, you want to only have a certain amount of pages to show something off. So like there is fun in like orchestrating like, what is this, how am I going to get this crazy amount of action to happen in like 5 or 6 panels on this page? Can I do it so I don't have to add like several more pages to this? um then yeah, on the other side, when you get to do like a splash page, and it's like, all right, if I'm gonna do a splash page, and I'm gonna have to make it like crazy, I'm gonna have to like pick a good angle, I have to make it look, and I really like the relationship between the two, where like you're leading up to
Oh yeah.
ways you can really use that to your advantage. Because yeah, when you splash it, then it's like, all right, we're gonna put a lot of this, has to be 1 or 2 pages for a reason. You got to give that some good attention.
Sure. So as you're drawing, do you feel that you have a specific style, or do you like to mold between different types of style to being more realistic or more cartoony or more stylized to more, how that would go for as a storyboardist? I assume you can't always be stylized, or you can,
Yeah,
they want you in a certain aspect.
yeah, yeah. I think for the longest time, and I feel like a lot of artists feel like this sometimes, where like you don't really know what your style is. You just sort of keep, again, like you pull from so many different things that you only see like the mass of what other people you've like borrowed from and like have taken influence from. But I think only recently, only in the past couple of years, have I started to figure out what my style is. And it's typically, and I do go back and forth depending on the things. So like all the Mindwave stuff, I feel like is is kind of cartoony, but with like a hint of realism. So like it's
Mm-hmm.
my balance between cartoony and realistic. It's not like my most realistic stuff, because I like having really expressive expressions and poses and stuff, and especially with like superhero, and
Yeah.
supervillain stuff. It's like you gotta get some tuniness in there,
Mm-hmm.
and that comes from watching all the superhero cartoons. Um, yeah, so that one's like my balance. And then
Yeah.
for other stuff, then it's like other stuff I play around with it's usually more cartoonier, more kids WB animated style stuff. That there's a lot of influence uh on my work from like that kind of stuff, with like Teen Titans and Legion of Superheroes, and a lot of DC cartoons.
Yeah.
Have a lot of great cartoons that
Yeah.
influence me a lot.
Yeah, they do. They do. I mean, that's the thing that DC does very, very well. That's for sure. So you're clearly making quite a career. You've worked on absolutely amazing pieces of art and pieces in work. Where would you like to see? Like, what are some future projects? What is the top of the ladder for you on what you would like to see you do in the future? Where's Samir going to be in 10 years?
Oh man, there are a lot of, I feel like there are a lot of things always like right, just kicking around in my
Yeah.
head. Um, Definitely as far as like, oh wow, 10 years. That's a
Maybe even that's too long. That feels like way too long. I mean, if I was going to say 10 years, I don't know, but
um I feel like I'd like to because we Dave and I have had sort of like big aspirations for where we take our characters, and like bringing other characters in, and
oh, sure.
having like ensemble stories. So to have some sort of story where we get to have, for lack of a better like analogy, our like Avengers,
Yeah, exactly.
story, where we can have just like showcase different types of voices and characters, in just like a really fun adventure. Um, and on the animation side, um, I feel like some kind of I don't know. I feel like everyone in animation wants to get like a show made. So that's like the easy answer. But as far as like something that I could work on, I would love to build enough clout to like bring back. I mean, everyone's making reboots and remakes, so to bring back some like beloved thing, of course, because I feel like everyone has like their one thing that they want to do, which is either I think top of the list is be involved in some sort of static shock thing. That would be really cool. If not that, I want to bring back Dino Riders.
What? Dino Riders, hell yeah!
Yeah, that would be awesome. I have to figure out who that belongs to, but
I mean, you probably have a better chance with Dino Riders, but I do think that I'd much want to see that Static Shock. I mean, that would be so sweet if I mean, of course, and I think he's been gone long enough that it would be brand new to so many people that I mean, that would be so cool. So I hope something like that gets to happen. That would be extremely cool. So yeah, I don't have too much more here for you, Samir. I appreciate you sitting down with SuperCon, taking the time to talk to us, talk to a bunch of Midwestern guys about comics and animation. You're living in that big city in California, it's like, oh man, you have but I guess you got like, coronavirus and wildfires and all that stuff.
Yeah,
right
our
now.
sky was yellow for last week, so it's like it's not super luxurious here right now. It's like we're hunkering down. So.
But I want to say a big thank you. So like from our whole entire community here in the Midwest, appreciate you checking in. Our whole Midwest community here will definitely follow you. It was so nice to talk to you and get to meet you and find out what you've been working on. Clearly an extremely you're a really unique creator, have this very cool background. I can't wait to see what's next. Thank you for tuning in to our, agreeing to be a part of SuperCon. We really, really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. And this has been awesome. I really hope next time we get to do it in person, get to actually attend SuperCon for real. So
exactly. We'll get you and Dave, we'll be in the same room. We'll do a panel. We'll get a bunch of people in front and you guys can show all your stuff off. So that would be really great. So everybody else who's watching, thank you guys for tuning into this panel. We have tons of other panels. Make sure you check out all the other cool creators that are taking their time to be a part of SuperCon Online. And thank you guys so much for joining us today. So that's everything here. So thank you so much from everybody at SuperCon, and thank you again, Samir. I appreciate you taking the time with me. You have a good night.
All right, you too, man. Thank you so much.
Yep.